Hello. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Crowdfund Shropshire launch. It's so wonderful to see so many of you here in the room, and I know there's a multitude of other people somewhere in the ether listening to us and watching us as well, which is wonderful. My name is Nicola Daniels, and I am the co-chair of the Voluntary and Community Sector Assembly. And my partner in crime is Julie Merrill from Taking Part, and she's somewhere in the ether watching us as well. So my day job is the Chief Officer of Mayfair Community Centre in Church Stretton. So I'm really interested, like everybody else, to hear what's got to be said today, because as we all know, funding is such a vital part of everything we do. But the Voluntary and Community Sector Assembly, I just want to say a few words about that. The Assembly is an amalgamation of all sorts of voluntary, community, social enterprise organisations of all different shapes and sizes and all different interests. And we come together to share information, to meet in forums of interest, to work together and to provide a voice for the sector. And that's really important in terms of our strategy going forward and working with our partners like Shropshire Council and Health and everybody else. So one of the things that we do as an assembly is hear about the good things, but also hear about the concerns from the sector. We know in Shropshire that there's a very, very strong voluntary and community sector. There's over 1,100 different registered charities and social enterprises. And that doesn't include the whole wealth of grassroots organisations as well that aren't registered anywhere. We've got a really vibrant live sector, but we also have our challenges. We always have challenges, but recently the cost of living crisis has led to increasing demands in all sorts of services and activities, and many more people needing our services across the county. We've also had cost increases ourselves, which is sort of a national issue, but we've all had to incur cost increases, and the money that we get coming in is harder and harder to get. And there's also been issues around volunteering. But there's always that constant thing is how do we get enough money to continue doing all the things we do that we know work and really make a difference to our local communities? But also, how do we get that extra bit of funding as well to try something new? Because being a very strong, vibrant sector, we're always identifying new things and trying to do new things to meet our local needs. So funding remains a constant, massive issue for us. And with anything, there's no, all of you probably know, well, we all know, that there's no magic answer to funding. But what we need is lots of tools in our box so that we can try lots of things to get what we can to support our communities. So it's been really good this year. At the VCSA AGM, the High Sheriff told us about how Shropshire Community Foundation was being set up as a grant-giving scheme for the sector, and that was great news. And here we are today as well to hear about another great bit of news, another opportunity for us for funding, trying different things to fund for our services and activities. So today, I'm going to hand over to Leslie and Jane, who are going to talk about the idea behind this and Shropshire Council's role. Then we're going to have Frank talking about Space Hive and how it works and how people can interact with it. Hannah is going to give us a little update on the UK Shared Prosperity Fund and how that fits into this Space Hive. Then we're going to have some questions. And then Ali from Community Resource is going to tell us all about what the Shropshire Infrastructure Partnership can do to support local groups and organisations. Okay, so I shall hand over to Leslie Picton, who is the leader of Shropshire Council.
Thank you very much indeed, Jen. Thank you.
I didn't do my ticket.
Oh, look, I've got a Chris Whitty moment coming on now. Next slide, please.
We haven't even done the...
That's you.
That's me. Yeah, that's the agenda. And now we're on to Leslie. Right, do you want me to do the next slide?
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Good afternoon, everybody, for those of you who I haven't met. And what I think is really lovely is that I see a lot of faces in the audience that I recognise today. My name's Leslie Picton. I'm the leader of Shropshire Council. Please forgive my notes, but I do have some important things down here that I want to tell you. Everywhere I go in Shropshire, in fact, I think anywhere I go, but particularly in Shropshire, as Jen's just said, people talk to me about all the amazing voluntary groups, charities, everything else that keep Shropshire going. And as I've listened to people over the years, there's one thing that people say to me, and it's something that I've very much taken to heart. Without the voluntary and community sector, Shropshire would fall over. I actually think that without the voluntary and community sector, the whole of the UK would probably fall over. But it is, as Jen said, particularly important in Shropshire, and it's particularly important to Shropshire Council. There was a survey done recently, and that's partly why I've got my notes. So the survey this year said that 84% of respondents in the voluntary and community sector have seen an increased demand for services. Well, I'm sure we will all say that. The council is not alone in that either. 47% of those people that responded reported a lack of confidence in the ability to cope with the loss of organisational resources linked to the cost of living crisis. That's hit every one of us really hard. Not only is it costing us more to provide those services, but more people are needing the services in the first place. And to be fair, and this will not be a surprise, more organisations than ever reported not being confident at all about being able to secure the necessary funding. And 37% of survey respondents said they were really worried about getting and maintaining volunteers. That was in comparison to 15% the year before. And we know that any losses within that charitable sector, within the voluntary sector, will be felt absolutely acutely by our communities, especially in communities like our own, which are in some cases quite deprived, but certainly rural and certainly in need of our support. But you know, despite all these challenges, you are incredibly resilient people. You've had austerity, you've had pandemics, you've had cost of living crises. And yet one of the things that the survey also showed was that actually some charities have thrived. Not all. And I think it would be fair to say that some of the bigger charities have coped easier than the smaller ones. But as I said, there is grounds for optimism. Resilience and resourcefulness have helped, and those charities not just survive, but as I said, in many cases thrive. The British public are also incredibly generous. You'll have seen on numbers of occasions where people have given monies locally and nationally to help different charities. But it's about having the right framework to do that. The one thing I am very clear about, and Shropshire Council is very clear about, is that we have to do something. So Shropshire VCSA is all about having a voice. The likes of Nick and Julie and the Assembly Board and the Forums of Interest and all the Assembly members work on that voice. That voice is very, very strong in Shropshire. So civic crowdfunding, sorry, I should have said next slide. So civic crowdfunding, for me, fits with that approach. It gives local groups an opportunity to voice their ambitions and to say what they want to achieve on a much, much wider basis. And it also helps us as the council to understand the needs and to find locally designed solutions to help those needs. The approach is community-led. It is based on what you know, the people you work with, what they need and their ideas, or even your ideas for how to respond. And Frank and Ali are going to talk about that later on. As a local politician, I'm really interested in this approach because I suppose it's a bit like casting a vote, isn't it? It's about like people saying, I really understand that project, I really like that project, I'm going to cast my vote for that project. So in a way, it tells us what really matters to people, and people really matter in the decision-making process. Next slide, please. So it's different from your usual crowdfunding because you can crowdfund for anything, and I thank Sarah for giving me a few examples here. If you have a look at Just Giving pages for Shropshire, you'll find Saha under 9s looking for an away football kit. There's funding for cat rehoming in Clibbury Mortimer. There's an ultrasound machine needed for the Robert Jones and Agnes Hunt for heart screening. And the Bradbury Care Centre is raising money for a touch table, which is one of those screen activity tables. Brilliant projects, all very worthy causes, incredibly different. But civic crowdfunding is different. It's about alignment with local strategic priorities and agreed objectives. I hope you're all familiar with the Shropshire Plan, but this was our idea of sharing the council's focus and the attention on how we want to try and improve all those people, somewhere around 343,000 people now that live in Shropshire. We are experiencing challenging times, both economically and socially, and without a focus, we could get lost in all that melee. So this project, like so many others, focuses on 4 overall objectives. But what's different is that it isn't defined. So we know we can achieve all 4 of those objectives, but it's you, the voluntary and community sector groups, who know how best to deliver these in your area with your expertise in your communities. So to quote from the introduction, and forgive me, I am going to read this bit, communities will be encouraged to share the issues they face and potential solutions they believe will make a difference, with confirmed solutions being enabled and supported to progress, building on the strengths and networks that already exist. That's a very wordy way of saying, you know what's needed, we just need to help you to do it. But change isn't a top-down process, it's something that starts with individuals and with those people who understand their community, that's you, and are willing to take action. That is also you. I think civic crowdfunding in Shropshire is going to be a real success. I hope you share my excitement at the end of this. And I'm now going to hand over to Jane Trethui, who is Shropshire Council's Assistant Director for Homes and Communities. Jane, next slide, please.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Leslie. Thank you, everybody. It's great to be here today. Oh, gosh, do I hate that photograph. Move on quickly. Really, if Shropshire Council isn't going to be leading this initiative, what are we doing here? What's this all about? What's our role here? In fact, over the years, Shropshire Council has used its ability to invest in the voluntary community sector, but as you all know, over the years that ability has reduced. Budgets have reduced, everything has become tighter, and out of necessity, unfortunately, we have lost local grant pots of funding that you might have bid into previously, seen some reductions in contract values as well that perhaps you were able to access before. And basically we've had to ask everybody to do more for less. And that's the unfortunate reality we find ourselves in today. So we have, where we could, as the council, tried to help out whenever we found a possibility to do so. So you might recall last year we ran the pilot community asset grant scheme. I don't know if anybody here in the room bid into that, but we were fortunate enough to access some national funding that was made available post-COVID as a sort of part of the economic recovery after the pandemic, as if it was over yet. I'm not quite sure if it is. But we were able to access £150,000, which we were able to use to support 14 village halls and community centres up and down Shropshire. That goes from the Brownlow Community Centre Trust in Whitchurch to the Community Land Trust and its centre in Bishop's Castle, benefited from that funding pot, which is something we're really pleased about. But the reality is that was a limited opportunity. That grant pot ran out and we've not been able to replenish it. And we know all too well that across the voluntary and community sector in Shropshire, the challenges that you face are really significant, as they are for the public sector more broadly, and I'm sure you all know that too. So one of the things that we do rely on as a consequence, all of us in the room here and the council as well, is the strength of the partnerships that have been developed and are being sustained still across Shropshire now. So whilst we're not in a position to make big financial contributions anymore as Shropshire Council, what we could do was to purchase this particular tool or platform, as it's known, which is Crowdfund Shropshire. And we can draw upon all the knowledge and all the skills, both at Shropshire Council, but also here in the room and beyond, in order to make a success of this. And in terms of the council's role, there are 4 main ways in which we can help, and those are listed there. And I'm going to go through those now and just explain a little bit more about each one. Thank you, glamorous assistant. Great. So, in terms of finding investment, so Frank will go into this in more detail, Frank here from Space Hive. But to make civic crowdfunding effective, we actually need a starting pot of funds in order to kick it off. And of course, you could, any of you at any time, go through your own crowdfunding approach and do 100% crowdfunding. And I'm sure others, yourselves and others have done that in the past as well. But actually, we want to try and make it easier than that for you and give you a head start. And our role is significant in this, in being able to access external funding. And a lot of that is likely to be from the UK government. And we have probably a bit of an edge at the local authority in being able to access that. It can be sometimes quite a competitive approach that UK government expects us to go through. And really, Hannah, who will speak a bit later, looking around, I can't spot her, is going to, sorry, you're right in front of me, sorry, couldn't see for looking, is one of the team of officers that we have in place to support this activity, and we'll speak about that a little bit more. Her and her colleague, Gary Spence, have been really central to pulling this project together and looking at how we can bring money in to help it work. So awareness of those funding opportunities is just the start. We then have to look at how to design the allocation so that it can be accessible to yourselves, to the voluntary community sector. And large allocations requiring match funding often doesn't work terribly well for the voluntary community sector normally. So this is a way for us to try and get past that hurdle. Because you may have found that as a difficulty in the past. And civic crowdfunding is intended to kind of break down those barriers and get you to the starting block to match those funds with public donations. That's the goal. We will also try and encourage different funding bodies to see if they can work with us. We don't want to divert funding away from any existing sources, so this is also seeing if we can find ways to access additional pots of funding that perhaps hasn't really kind of taken an interest in what we're doing so far. So sometimes these are funders who might not have the administrative capacity to work with a whole range of colleagues, so perhaps we can unlock some of that as well. So it's those sorts of things that we're talking about when we talk about supporting funding and the council's role. Thank you. So, awareness raising. So, crowdfunding only actually works if you have enough people aware, if you tell people what's going on and you really shout it from the rooftops. So we have the support of Shropshire Council's communications team. They are excellent communications professionals, and they've been working with us to design the Crowdfund Shropshire logo and spread the word about this launch, and will continue to support this process all the way through. We're very fortunate that they are offering their skills to support this activity and the projects that come forward through it. So that's something that we have on offer. And I'm delighted to report we already have support for local networks. From local networks, and many of you today have a wide reach across Shropshire already, and we have representatives here of SALC, Shropshire Association of Local Councils. Diane is here as well, Diane Dorrell. We have Shropshire Infrastructure Partnership involved, and I believe Ali is speaking later. We have the Lord Lieutenant of Shropshire here as well, Anna Turner, very honoured to have her here, and Selina Graham, I believe, is here. I'm looking around now. Is Selina here today? And the High Sheriff Mandy Thorne, who can't attend, is certainly helping to spread the word as well. So we're looking to use all of our tactics, our routes, our communication methods that we possibly can to support this and to amplify the messages that you would want to put out from your individual crowdfunding campaigns once we're up and running. Thanks. So, who is the crowd? Who are they, and how do you find them? How do you access them, and how do you build that crowd up? The crowd is all important to the concept of crowdfunding, as the name would suggest. So many of you will have heard about the work of the Charitable Aid Foundation, or CAF. Their work is aimed at fostering a more widespread culture of giving and participation in the UK. You probably are all aware of them anyway. But I'm just going to read out from some of their research that they've published, because I think it's quite relevant to the conversation we're having today. So their research in 2023, so this year, shows that 2 billion of extra giving was given in 2022. This was partly linked apparently to support for Ukraine, but it wasn't the result of donations from more people, from additional people. But it was actually the same people who always give, but giving some more, which is quite interesting to understand that there are resources out there to tap. The research has also showed that the reduction in local fundraising events caused by COVID restrictions has been locked in. There hasn't been a recovery for those local fundraising initiatives, and that's a real concern. And that's one of the reasons as well why we thought this crowdfunding initiative was really significant, because we need to reopen that opportunity for local organisations to access local funding. The top 3 categories for donations for giving are animal welfare. Everybody loves a sad-looking donkey, apparently. Overseas aid and disaster relief. So these are things, I guess, people find it very easy to engage with, and something that they therefore feel happy to open their wallets for. So that's a challenge for us. And the last one is religious organisations. People also donate there. In 2022, an average of 7% reported volunteering for a charity in the last 4 weeks. And that's a reduction from pre-pandemic levels, which was 9%. So again, that's a challenge for everybody. So again, one of the joys of crowdfunding, that awareness raising, that telling people what you're doing and the significance of it in your local community, heightening and amplifying your messages, is another way of trying to gain more benefits out of this process. So it's something quite significant in our view. So at the moment, it looks to us like there's about 1.6 million fewer people volunteering compared to 5 years ago, and that's the information from CAF. So this is quite a difficult context in which to be working. So as you are voluntary and community groups and organisations and already do a lot to build the crowd, our perspective on this as the council is whatever we can do to support you, we will through this crowdfunding platform. Thank you. Okay, so talking about that, how do we grow and sustain the crowd? So a big piece of this is about really sharing what the success has been and actually celebrate. But can they actually see the outcome of their donations and what difference it makes in their community? So Frank's presentation is going to talk a lot more about this, so I won't get into a lot of detail about it. But it's important to highlight that the Shropshire Council team will actually be part of helping you with this. You won't be on your own with trying to gather data and interpret it and pull together reports and share those reports. So there's a piece of work that we can do to back you on this. And we will, as a council, be working closely with anyone who sets up a project through Shropshire Crowdfund to make sure that we capture all the important facts and figures. We report project successes as widely as we possibly can. And we bring all the data together to really show the social value and the impact of the work that you're doing, and you and many more across Shropshire. So really that brings me back to the beginning of this discussion, which was about using the evidence of impact to then hopefully unlock more investment for Shropshire. Because if people can see, I put money into this organisation, look what a brilliant job they've done, that will mean that you will have much more success in future. That is our goal. That's what we hope for. So that's the Shropshire Council perspective on this. Thank you very much for listening. I'm going to hand you over now to Frank from Space Hive itself.
Thank you very much indeed, Jane. And thank you, Nicola. Thank you, Leslie. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Frank Kibble, and I work for Space Hive, the crowdfunding platform that Shropshire Council has partnered with on this fantastic new programme. And so I'm here today to talk to you about the crowdfunding side, how that fits into this amazing funding opportunity that Jane was just mentioning there, and Hannah is going to be talking to us a little bit more about in just a moment's time. And Space Hive, by way of introduction, is a civic crowdfunding platform, a community crowdfunding platform for locally led ideas, projects that bring local places to life, that brighten up local areas, that bring communities together. And really, the idea of Space Hive is to make it easy for anyone to improve their local area by creating a crowdfunding campaign that many people can pledge to completely fund a project. And we've been doing this for a decade now in building an online website which is has been co-designed, I should say, with local authorities to make it easy for anyone to create a project and fund it on the platform. So just to give you an example of a typical crowdfunding campaign that we might see on the Space Hive platform, let's say imagine that I have a small patch of grass at the end of my road that's looking a bit neglected, looking a bit underused, and I actually think that it could be a great space to bring my street together to actually plant a vegetable patch. Now, if I've got the right permissions and I've got a budget for that particular project, I can log on to a platform like Space Hive to launch a crowdfunding campaign, and all my neighbours who are going to benefit from that veg patch can chip in £2, £5 here and there to fully fund that project. But as Jane was saying there, Space Hive and our model doesn't stop right there. We work with local authorities, foundations, corporate organisations, brands to unlock and tap into other pots of funding that are out there that could be matched to those crowdfunding campaigns that are taking place on the Space Hive platform. So this really is such a wonderful collection of people who have stakes in communities coming together to collectively fund something. And the best Space Hive campaigns, we've got a few examples coming up, are the ones that tap into, as we were just hearing, a real need, a challenge, or perhaps even an opportunity in a local area, and actually design something really unique that can capture the imagination of the crowd. And of course, this is a method for you guys to fund projects that you've perhaps got up your sleeve, perhaps that you've got coming up over the next year or so. And of course, you might have come along here today with the premise of finding out about this new exciting funding opportunity. But Space Hive and crowdfunding doesn't just stop at that funding. There are all these amazing added benefits that come with crowdfunding beyond simply hitting your crowdfunding target and then being able to deliver a project. It's a way, first and foremost, of developing new skills, building capacity within your organisation. 65% of people who use Space Hive successfully and crowdfund a project have never done anything like this before. They've never done this kind of civic engagement, never done this kind of online fundraising. And actually, it presents itself as an opportunity to hone new skills, perhaps in navigating the world of permissions to get permission for a project, or perhaps designing a social media campaign, which of course can be a really good tool for a crowdfunding campaign, because this is public fundraising. Now that's just an example, and plenty of crowdfunding campaigns, by the way, on Space Hive do succeed without a social media campaign. But what this is an example of is how the capacity in your organisation can be built by crowdfunding. Secondly, crowdfunding is a great way of creating new connections in your local area. As I just touched upon, crowdfunding is a public form of fundraising. So your crowdfunding page will be up online, and you'll be able to send the link to that crowdfunding page to your community to encourage them to, first and foremost, get excited about it, and then hopefully contribute to it. And you're bound to be out and about talking to people about what you're doing, the fundraising campaign you're undergoing. And there's no doubt you're going to be meeting new people who might be just as passionate about your idea as you are, and perhaps able to come on board to your project team to volunteer, or even help you deliver something even more impactful. And you simply wouldn't get that opportunity with a kind of traditional grant making processes where an application is sent off and then it sits in perhaps a desk drawer for a few months before it's assessed. This public form of fundraising is new, and what it does is it gives you that opportunity to deliver something even more impactful with your community and those new connections. And then finally, crowdfunding is a great way of raising the profile of what you're doing as an organisation. Now, you might be doing fantastic work in your corner of Shropshire, perhaps as you're an organisation looking to scale up what you are delivering or expand into new areas. And crowdfunding is the perfect vehicle to do that, because as I mentioned, it's a public form of fundraising. People that you share this project with are going to be new to crowdfunding, perhaps, but they're going to potentially be new to you and your organisation. And you can leave your mark on these people, and that won't just stop at the end of the crowdfunding campaign. You know, once that person's chipped in a couple of quid and they can see that contribution has gone towards a real life project, they'll stay invested in it. And you've got that way of communicating with that crowd of people who backed you for the next project and the project after that. And again, that is just, you know, it really captures the magic of crowdfunding. It isn't like other grant programs. And the way it relates to the funding that's on offer from Shropshire Council will really bring those amazing added benefits. And our role at Spacehive, alongside the council as the council's partner on Crowdfund Shropshire, is to fuel the ideas of the community through workshops and events like the one that you've come along here today. Thank you all so much for coming and hearing about Crowdfund Shropshire, but also through the advice and support of our expert team. At Spacehive, we aren't just a kind of faceless crowdfunding website. We've got real humans behind who are working in the background, supporting everyone who launches a crowdfunding campaign on Spacehive to get that project up on the platform, to plan a great crowdfunding campaign, and then to execute it. And our project success team, as they're called, are so successful in supporting groups to do this. Over 2,000 project ideas have been successfully funded on the Spacehive platform, raising nearly £30 million. And a lot of that is down to that really unique support that's available to all of you on this endeavour. And then finally, before I hand over to Hannah, there's the key piece of the jigsaw, the funding to turbocharge those crowdfunding campaigns that will come from Shropshire Council and integrate within the crowdfunding campaigns. And I'll talk to you a little bit about how that integrates when I'm handed back from Hannah in a moment. So I'll bring in Hannah now to talk about UK SPF.
Thank you, Frank. Hi everyone, so yes, I'm Hannah Smith and I'm part of the UK SPF team at Shropshire Council. And I'm responsible for, thank you. And I'm responsible for the community in place aspect of that. I'm just going to talk to you really about the UK Shared Prosperity Funds, what it's about, a bit of background, and then just focus on the community in place fund specifically. So the UK Shared Prosperity Fund really is part of the government's Levelling Up initiative. And so the main aim really was to succeed and improve the EU funds. So to do that, it's focused on the UK, sorry, I'm quite nervous, can you tell? I do apologise. So it focuses on UK priorities and it also allows local authorities to direct their funding to local needs. And as part of that, last summer we had to do an investment plan that would focus how Shropshire would meet the needs of the following areas. So we've got 4 areas and 4 themes within UK SPF. So we've got business support, community in place, people and skills, and the rural funds. So business support, we've got £5.9 million, community in place, £3.35 million, people and skills, £1.6 million, and the rural funds is £2.6 million. So just on the rural funds, with that one, that is just for areas outside of Shrewsbury town centre. So any projects within the town centre wouldn't be eligible for that. And that, the rural funds is split between business support and community in place. So that 2.6 million is split between those 2 particular themes. All of the allocations have to be spent by March 2025. So we're on quite a tight timescale to get all this money out the door. So talking about community in place, specifically, we've got some key objectives: bringing communities together by supporting a wide range of activities, services and facilities that meet local needs. Support for cultural capacity and social cohesion, leading to an increasingly diversified cultural offer, and support for all sectors of the community to recognise and explore their potential. So that leads on to our key investment areas. So we have 5 key investment areas. We have improvements to towns and high streets, and that's all about public realm improvements, making places look look better and feel more appealing. Then we've got enhancing existing cultural, historic and heritage institutions offer. Again, this is capital monies, and that's about bringing cultural assets back into community use or expanding cultural assets to benefit the community. Then we've got the local arts, cultural heritage and creative theme. And that's really about, that's revenue to support events and activities in those areas. And then we've got the capacity building and infrastructure support for local groups. This one's really about strengthening the skills and abilities of communities and supporting community development type work. And then the last one, which is fairly self-explanatory, is the feasibility studies. So where we are to date is back in January, we had a call for feasibility studies, which all the money has been committed for that, so we don't have any more funds around the feasibility studies. In April, we had the first round for the other 4 priorities, E1, E4, E6 and E11, and we committed £1.5 million. And we've just closed a call last week for those 4 to try and commit the rest of the funds, and we had significant applications worth about £3 million. And if you do the maths, we haven't got enough money to fund all of those projects. So those will go through an application process to now be scored and approved in the next few weeks. Finally, I just thought I'd give some examples of the projects we have funded. So we funded a community retail space. So that was a refurbishment of an empty retail space for community use. A community facility in Doddington. Again, refurbishment of a community area and some interpretation. And we've got the Cultural Compact Grant Scheme. That's about revenue funds to support events across Shropshire around those areas. And obviously, we've got the Civic Crowdfund Shropshire, which you know all about now, and Frank's going to do some more on it in a minute. And then some of the examples of the feasibilities we've done are around Montgomery Canal, some cycle networks, and Shrewsbury Castle. So that's just a flavour of some of the stuff that we've done. I'm staying to the end, so if anybody's got any questions around UK SPF, quite happy to answer them. But I'm going to pass back to you now, Frank, to do your second bit.
Thanks so much, Hannah. And as I'll be talking to you now about how that funding relates to the crowdfunding element of Crowdfund Shropshire. So first and foremost, it's worth just mentioning that Crowdfund Shropshire has a website, and this is where you need to go, well, where you can go in order to find out anything you need to know about this fantastic programme, from the dates of the funding windows that I will run us through in just a moment's time, to the fund criteria that Hannah just touched upon there, and those desired outcomes through the UK Shared Prosperity funding, which are really important to be aware of when you're writing your pitches for funding. And then as we go on, the projects that are being funded through this programme. So really excitingly, all of the crowdfunding campaigns that will be launching across Shropshire will be all displayed on the Crowdfund Shropshire site under that projects tab that you can see there. I was really excited to use my clicker, and I can use the laser, which is good. So yeah, do check this out. The link is on there on the screen there, and this, as I say, will be a central hub for everything you need to know about Crowdfund Shropshire from today onwards. And as when we talk about crowdfunding and setting up a crowdfunding page, what that really entails is setting up a kind of just a web page for a project you may have. So let's imagine my veg patch, just to revive that example. I would log on to the SpaceHive platform, to spacehive.com/create, and then create a page for that veg patch. So I might call it, where I live is Bath, so the Bath veg patch. I might talk about the impact of that project, what I'm going to be delivering, why it's such an amazing idea, and that will create a kind of public-facing shop window for your idea, where people in the community are going to visit, having clicked on a link maybe, and as I say, hopefully get excited about your idea enough to chip in a few quid to help you crowdfund it. And what underpins that crowdfunding process are the checks that our team at SpaceHive will do just to ensure that your projects are indeed viable, they are deliverable. This is a really unique part of the SpaceHive platform and the SpaceHive model, the verification process, and it's really there to strengthen your confidence that you've got a viable project that you can ask your community to chip in a few quid to help with. And not just that, because there is public funding involved, we just need a couple of kind of safeguards on what the projects are going to be, how they're put together. So when you create your crowdfunding campaign, you'll be required to give a budget for that project. Our team will just go through that budget and make sure that it's kind of robustly put together. If there are some cost items in there that require multiple quotes, for example, our team will advise you on that. If there are some cost items that are quite run-of-the-mill, again, let's say on my veg patch I want to get some soil from Homebase, a simple screenshot of what that pricing will look like will suffice for that check. And then also importantly around the permissions and governance piece. So I'll need probably permission from my council to create that veg patch at the end of my road. And our team can advise you on what you need to do in order to get that permission if you don't have it already. And then other policies, governance policies, and documents might be required depending on the type of project that you put forward. So, for example, if you're bringing the community into a public space, have you got your public liability insurance? If you're going to be working with children or vulnerable adults, have you got a safeguarding policy? These are just examples. By the way, for my veg patch, I might need public liability insurance, and that's something that our team would advise me on once my project is being checked in verification. So our team have verified literally thousands of projects and have got a real breadth of experience and knowledge on what different types of projects need, different types of community projects, that is. So it really isn't a kind of pass or fail process, this verification. It's there more as a conversation to just ensure you guys have got confidence, as I say, to launch your campaigns. And then the other kind of part of this, and this is where what Hannah was talking there about the shared prosperity funding comes in. On the SpaceHive platform, alongside that kind of public-facing shop window, your crowdfunding page, it's also necessary to complete a pitch for, in this case, the UK Shared Prosperity Funding. And that's private-facing. It's more like a grant application in terms of its form. And whereas with the crowdfunding page, you're speaking directly to the community, with the pitch, you're speaking directly to the council to ask for a contribution to your crowdfunding campaign. So I made note of some of those interventions that Hannah was speaking about there. And again, if we think about my veg patch idea, I might talk about, for example, the E1 intervention there around town centres and high streets. If my veg patch is going to benefit the kind of the town centre or high street and is indeed a capital project, this is where I talk about how my project will achieve that and the desired outcomes of the Shropshire plan that we heard earlier from Leslie. So this is really important to get right. And again, our team are going to be on hand to support you through this process, both in logging on and getting to grips with your crowdfunding pitch, but also in advising you just how you can position your project so it aligns really well with what Shropshire Council are looking to fund. In addition to the crowdfunding capabilities and on the SpaceHive platform and your ability to get funds in from the community to support, to fund a project, you're also able to attract interest from your community for volunteering by putting the call out perhaps for people's time, skills, any in-kind items that can help with delivery of your project. And while the crowdfunding element is the prime focus of this exercise, you're looking to fully fund your project, this can be a great way for people who perhaps aren't able to make a financial contribution to be part of the project and to help with that delivery of the project. So do make full use of the volunteering tool on the SpaceHive platform, and this will be picked up on as well by Shropshire Council when they come to assess all of your pitches for funding. So I mentioned we will be running funding windows for the Crowdfund Shropshire programme, and we are at the beginning now of our inaugural funding window, which is really exciting. And the date that you need to have in mind is the 29th of November. That's when the current funding window will close, and that's after which another funding window will launch in the new year. Dates, of course, to be just decided on that one. And so we've got just shy then of 2 months for yourselves and Space Hive and the amazing support from our partners at Shropshire Council to work on your crowdfunding campaigns, get them ready and get them launched so that you can be ready for when Shropshire Council make assessments of what pitches of funding have come in. And so there's going to be 2 assessments for this inaugural funding window, one at the end of the year and one just in the new year. And that's taken into account the kind of different times at which your crowdfunding campaigns will launch. Some of you might be sitting there and thinking, as soon as I get home, I'm going to log on to Space Hive and get cracking with this. Some of you may need a little bit more time to get a few permissions in place, something like that. So there's flexibility with this and different opportunities for you to be considered by the council for funding to your crowdfunding campaign. There's a few things to know about crowdfunding on Space Hive, which I'll just run through with you now. There's a 5% platform fee, which is only taken if the crowdfunding campaign is successful, and that goes towards the platform cost, that verification process, as well as the support of our expert team. And there are transaction fees which are charged by our platform payment provider, which is Stripe, if anyone's familiar with that online payment provider, as there are with all kind of online payments. Space Hive has an all or nothing funding model, which means that you have to hit your target in order to receive the funds. And although this may seem a little bit daunting at first, trust me, it is a real asset to your crowdfunding campaign because there is a sense of urgency that comes with this form of crowdfunding. Your backers will know that you have to hit your target in order to receive the funds, and this will actually enable you to raise more funds faster. And this is borne out, actually, just to add, by the fact that Space Hive has the highest success rate of any of those crowdfunding platforms out there. We heard about Just Giving a little bit earlier, but something like 85% of crowdfunding campaigns on Space Hive hit their target, and that's really thanks to that wraparound support. When a partner of ours, like Shropshire Council, pledges to a crowdfunding campaign, it actually goes up to 94%. So although I wouldn't say it's a completely 100% done deal, you are in safe hands. You have been you're treading on a path that's well trodden, and the support of our team will help you cross that line. And then finally, as you might expect, and we heard from Leslie earlier about the strong voluntary and community sector here in Shropshire. Some of you might be here representing charities, and you can collect gift aid on all the pledges to your crowdfunding campaign if that applies to yourselves. So I touched upon there that wraparound support for yourselves as project creators on Space Hive every step of the way. It comes in a number of forms. We've got a really comprehensive help centre at Space Hive that provides a whole plethora of different articles, step-by-step guides, and how-tos, how to do pretty much anything on the Space Hive platform, from honing an idea and getting it kind of right for crowdfunding, to who to speak to for a particular permission, to how to map out your backers and plan for a great crowdfunding campaign. So really worth making full use of that help centre, because it really is it's packed so densely with everything you might need in your campaign. And our project success team are available via live chat workshops like the one here today, the project surgeries, and email. And that is a great way to get in touch with our team, who can help you kind of troubleshoot anything that that's going on the platform and advise you on how to run your fantastic crowdfunding campaign. And then finally, I really like talking about the final point there, about our network of over 2,000 successful project creators across the country who've done amazing things in their communities by crowdfunding similar projects to you guys. And if you spot a project on the Spacehive platform that you think, oh, that reminds me of what I've got up my sleeve, we're able to facilitate conversation. So you can swap tips with those people who were behind that project, and perhaps get a little bit of inspiration from them, from their story, and the human stories that really come out of crowdfunding. So the next steps from here on in, before I hand over, before we stop, I think, for some questions. There are 3 steps before the deadline on the 29th of October. Some of you may want to, as I say, skip one of the first step to creating your project page on Spacehive. But plenty of you will need a bit of feedback or want a bit of feedback on your idea. So you're more than welcome to complete an expression of interest form. There are some paper forms on every table that have been distributed, and hand it in to myself at the end, and that begins the conversation. I'll also be at the end able to have a chat with you all, as many of you as I can get around to give you some feedback on your idea. And then once you're happy, as I say, some people might be happy to kind of get onto the platform when they get home tonight. You can log onto the Spacehive platform and create your crowdfunding page and get started with that verification process, with that pitch and the launch of your campaign. And then, of course, there's a date for your diary to pitch to the funds available from the UK Share Prosperity Fund on the Spacehive platform by the 29th of November. So, yeah, hopefully that's kind of clear to you what you have to do. As I say, happy to speak with anyone I can afterwards to give them feedback on their idea. I've just put up here, it's mainly for your benefit once you get the slides in the follow-up email tomorrow. The Spacehive team are available via support@spacehive.com. That's how you can get in touch with my colleagues in the project success team to ask them any kind of question about the crowdfunding process or get their advice. The amazing Shropshire Council team are also available via crowdfund@shropshire.gov.uk to kind of answer questions on particularly the funds that are available, and clarify any points there that Hannah was raising earlier. All that's left to me to say is thank you so much for listening, and I'm really excited to hear about some of your project ideas. I believe we're going to stop now for some questions. If we want to, yes.
Thank you very much, Frank. Has anybody got any questions in the audience? Oh, lovely. Shall I whiz across? I'm afraid we'll have to run around with the microphone.
Hi, my name's Ben. I'm founding director at Osnosh CIC. We've grown to a point where we've got lots of different projects sort of running that all feed into one another. And they all interlink, but I feel with this model, if we try to explain that all, we'd lose people. So I guess my question is it possible to run multiple crowdfunding campaigns as the same organisation with yourselves, or is that create a conflict of interest or something?
Sorry, I'm going to be running back and forwards. Yeah.
Thanks so much. It's a great question. And the question was around, is it advisable to kind of run crowdfunding campaigns side by side? What I would say, Matt, is our team are really experienced at kind of drawing out the idea and helping you hone it for crowdfunding, and bringing to the surface what is going to kind of really appeal to the crowd. So that's probably where I'd say is the starting point, a conversation with our team to just kind of draw out those things. In terms of running crowdfunding campaigns simultaneously, I'd probably advise against it just because I wouldn't want you to stretch yourself too thin, and having two campaigns that might be shared with the same audience might create a little bit of confusion. So what is definitely possible, and what people do, is come back subsequently and run a second crowdfunding campaign once they've started off perhaps small, got a bit of confidence in it, and can really scale up next time. What I may just defer to the Shropshire team on is just kind kind of eligibility around CICs. Might be. Yeah. Oh, CICs aren't eligible. Sorry.
So we're not able to offer sort of pre-application advice for CICs or extra additional support. Ali's going to speak about that later, but CICs can apply. Okay.
Thanks, Sarah.
Yes, hello, I'm Paul Thornhill from Wem Rotary Club. I was just listening to what you were saying about 85% of the crowdfunding applications achieving their aim. In the event that one doesn't achieve their ambition, what happens to the money that people have paid in?
It's another great question, thank you. So in those small events, those rare events, the crowdfunding, the monies that are pledged via crowdfunding campaign, they're held in the Stripe payment platform and aren't passed on to the project creator until the crowdfunding campaign has hit their target. Now, what that means is if a campaign doesn't hit its target, all of those pledges will be refunded automatically by the platform, and so there's no kind of administrative burden on the group crowdfunding to manage those refunds. It's all done automatically.
Thank you.
Duncan Spilsbury, I'm part of the infrastructure team at Community Resource and involved in the SIP partnership, which Ali's going to be talking about a little bit later on. My focus really is on governance and the internal governance of some of the organisations that may actually be setting up these campaigns. One of the key things, obviously, that there's going to have to be is a bank account for funding to actually be paid into at some point. I imagine that the verification process that Spacehive would provide would actually talk applicants through that process in terms of a bank account, because the council side and the match funding that could come from UK SPF, I would imagine may be more burdensome on that financial regulation than what yourselves are with the crowdfunding element. Am I right in thinking that?
I might perhaps I might need to defer again. I can speak certainly on the Spacehive side of the crowdfunding. So when groups are setting up their crowdfunding accounts on the Spacehive platform, they're required to, so they can receive the funds at the end, set up an account with the Stripe payment platform, and that ensures it goes through kind of quite vigorous checks to ensure that, you know, obviously the bank account is associated, the correct bank account is associated, and the funds are received through, you know, correctly. Accompanying that, when the pitches are submitted, that's when you know, further governance is provided, you know, policies, financial forecasts, things like that, that just kind of back that up. So there are kind of different checks on the process by which, you know, bank accounts are set up and the correct funds are going to the correct type of projects. And in terms of, I guess, the you know, groups who may need to set up bank accounts, that's where you know, that communication between ourselves at Spacehive, Shropshire Council, yourselves, is going to be really key to just see where capacity or where support may be needed by the groups, especially if they're new. So yeah, look forward to kind of working with you on that. Hang on. Any?
Yeah, it's okay. I can probably manage that with Mike, actually. Is the advice to CIOs the same as what you were talking about the CICs?
I might need to defer to Sarah on that again, sorry.
Ali, am I right that we're covering CIOs? Yeah. Okay, we'll come on to that. There's some.
I just wanted to explore this bank account question a little further. If I understand correctly, what you're saying is that in the first instance, Stripe, as the payment platform, carries out a level of diligence on a bank account. What are the rules that they operate under? Can it be, for instance, a private bank account? Does the bank account have to have been established and transacted for any period of time beforehand? Because if it's a new account, there will clearly be no history on which diligence can be based. And I think those are important because we find that the whole question of raising purchase orders with local authorities is difficult. Many local authorities subcontract their accounting function to other organisations, which then also require diligence, and the whole process becomes a, you know, I'd rather pull my own head off than do it again. You know, it's horrible. Yeah.
It's a good question. I do feel your pain because I've I've done similar things as well in my life. But in terms of Stripe, the different verification processes, are opened up by the type of bank account that is listed there. So if it's a private bank account, that will leave. That will lead it down one path. If it's for associated with a community group, that will lead it down another path. And so there are slightly different paths there, and that I can provide more details afterwards of just like the process by which it goes through. It is separate to the SpaceHive platform. We don't handle any kind of sensitive bank account details. It's all handled through that payment platform. It is on our website, and I'll make sure that's shared afterwards, the step-by-step guide to setting up a Stripe account.
I'll come back to it. I do actually have an online question as well, which I'll come to when we're finished.
Mine is actually an online question from a partner organisation of ours who's streaming and has just dropped me a message to ask. So, so the question is around the pitch to Shropshire Council. Obviously, there's an amount of money that Shropshire Council are committing towards the pledge as well. Do we know what percentage that is? And does that depend on the UK SPF kind of outcome that they're applying for?
Is that more of a question for Hannah? Or Sarah?
So for eligible projects under UK SPF, we are looking to potentially support up to 60% of the project costs with a maximum value of £10,000. But we'll share more details. Joe.
Just to follow up, so Sarah, given that there's revenue and capital in
Yeah.
UK share transparency pot, is there a preference for revenue rather than capital? Is there a split?
So we have a much larger proportion for revenue and only a small proportion for capital. So we'll share these details with everyone. So yeah, we won't be able to fund many capital projects.
And the interventions? Because it's not all the interventions, is it?
No, we're looking at E11 in the main, and we may be able to support a few projects under E6. They're in the slides. So E6 was culture. But we're predominantly looking to support E11, which was a community theme.
Thank you. Just I'll come back to you.
Thank you. Could the council team clarify if an organisation wants to use the platform but doesn't want to apply for the UK Shared Prosperity grants, can they still use the platform, or has it got to be both?
Thank you. Yes, I think is a simple answer. Oh, sorry, I'll come back to you.
Are you making available these slides for us through what? Okay, thank you.
So my online question that I've had is, do you think that the crowdfunding works well for consortiums of organisations or better for individual organisations?
It's a really good question, and another very good question. I always think that kind of collaborative approach to projects can really kind of confirm the need or the challenge or the opportunity that is being addressed, and actually present like quite a more robustly put together project. If we're talking in practical terms, one organisation would have to kind of put their name forward and be the project owner, as we call it on Space Hive, and provide the kind of associated governance around the crowdfunding campaign. So it would, if it's a consortium of organisations working together, it might just be one of the organisations who has to put their hand up.
As normal, and I'm going to take the liberty of asking one more question. The 5% that gets charged to the successful projects, presumably you put that on your budget costs when you set up your...
Yeah, that's right. You don't need to worry about kind of adding on another cost item to the budgets. It's all calculated automatically. Let's say my veg patch costs £100. The crowdfunding target would be £105, or actually 106 with the, let's say, with those transaction fees. So it ladders up to your overall crowdfunding target, and no kind of shaving off the top or anything like that has to occur. You'll have the funds to deliver your project, and then that kind of 5% is put away.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from anybody here or anybody online or whatever? Okay, lovely. Right then, so we'll hand over to Ali then, who's going to tell us all about the support from Shropshire Infrastructure Partnership.
Where's the clicker? Who's got the clicker? Good. My team will be pleased to know it's a very simple piece of IT, because I have a real knack of messing any IT up. So, yeah. So I'm Ali Richardson. I'm the operations manager for the voluntary community and support team at Community Resource, and I'd like to introduce my team. If you can just put your hand up when I introduce you. So we've got Duncan Spilsbury, we've got Carol, and we've got Fee. We've also got, but not in the room, Eden, who will be back from maternity leave next week, covers the north. Duncan covers the south and central. Carol and I myself cover everywhere across Shropshire. And Trish, Holly and Fiona are amazing lead volunteers. And Fee will be supporting all the workshops that come from this project. Okay. So, okay. I knew I needed my other glasses. Sorry, I've reached that age where you have to have 2 pairs of glasses, so just bear with me a second. So there's 2 types of infrastructure support in Shropshire, and when we say infrastructure, I just want to reassure you, we don't build roads, we don't build bridges, okay? That's what people normally think, okay? We have strategic infrastructure support in Shropshire and also community infrastructure support. We're very lucky in Shropshire. It doesn't happen everywhere that we have infrastructure support for these small and medium groups, organisations and charities. It doesn't happen everywhere. We sit within Community Resource, which is a trusted, well-known charity of over 60 years in the voluntary sector, and our funding is by Shropshire Council because they really do believe in the importance of infrastructure support and why it's needed in our voluntary sector. So the strategic support is 4 organisations, 4 very well organisations, well known. We've got SYA, we've got The Cube, ourselves, Community Resource, and Energise. Energise are in the room. Don't think Kim's here from... Yeah. So brilliant. Okay. So the common goal with the strategic infrastructure is to support the voluntary sector as a collective. Okay. It's not constituted. It's just the goodwill and the expertise of these 4 main organisations that want to support infrastructure strategically. And their common goals are to avoid duplication, develop partnerships, offer expert help, promote and protect services within the voluntary sector, act as a point of contact, act as a relevant point of contact for system commissioning, influencing change, etc., across all the sectors. Develop consensus on issues of mutual interest, and most importantly, improve health and well-being and community life. So we have those common goals, okay, across strategic infrastructure. There we go. So the community infrastructure, the best way of explaining this really, it's coalface stuff. It's a lot of small and medium groups, organisations and charities don't have big departments that can cope with their constitution writing, their policies and procedures, all the training that they need to stay compliant, etc. So our objectives within the team are tailored governance, okay, so we support on that, legal structure advice. A lot of groups that are starting up
really don't know what's out there. Am I going to be a CIO? Am I going to be an unincorporated? So we go through all of the range of the legal structures with them. And then they can make a really informed decision on where they want to go. We have volunteering opportunities. So it's called volunteer brokerage. We recruit and support with volunteer management for volunteering. So we like to get local people placed into their local communities, volunteering for their local areas. A main aim, why we're here today as well, is to increase external funding and the grant opportunities. That's Carol's role, and fee supports on that as well. So bringing more external funding into the county, so not relying on internal funding like we used to a long time ago. It's very restricted now, so that's what we like to do now. We deliver accredited training to the volunteers, the staff, the groups and the organisations and the charities. So we know what is needed for those groups and those volunteers to be compliant, to feel confident, to be safe and to be sustainable in the voluntary sector. We obviously support public sector initiatives, and we also support the ICS, the Integrated Care System. Okay, so this is what we know as a team. This is what we've built up over our time as a team, okay? So lots of groups need our support because they don't have access to funds to pay for their mandatory refresher or CPD training. They can struggle because a lot of their policies and procedures are outdated. Their constitution was set up 20 years ago. It was put in a drawer. That original few trustees have now moved on or no longer in that charity. So they don't really know what their objectives are anymore and what their powers are. So there's a lot of guidance on constitutional support, or they just want to change their constitution. Things have moved on. They want to do different things now over the last 20 years. Many aren't aware of the funding opportunities. You only know what you know. So if you haven't got this support, and I mean, that's where Carol and Fee are great. They go out and they see the groups individually, and it can be a niche project. It can be something that's, it's really difficult to get funding for, and they do their research on that. So we don't write applications, but we do support with applications. So we'll find out what's available and obviously help with proofreading applications to make sure they're hitting the marker so they've got the best chance of success. So as I said, they don't have a lot of internal resource. After COVID, when we started up within this team, giving this sort of expert advice, we realised very early on, the insight was people were just on their knees. They were just delivering the frontline services. They didn't have time to write bids. They didn't have any time to do anything other than just get those frontline services out. And it exhausted existing trustees and volunteers, okay? So our biggest job really has been re-energising that and making sure they've got that support. So within our training packages, we'll have certain training for volunteers, okay, so that can be like safeguarding, first aid, professional conduct boundaries, mental health, etc. And then the organisational type training will be things like effective bid writing, effective press releases, governance and legal structure advice and support, okay. So, and they're delivered online and they're delivered face-to-face, whatever the sector needs in Shropshire. And we're very flex with that. They tell us what they need and we will work to that. We've got setting up new groups can be complicated. So this is where we come into crowdfunding. Groups locally or across the county might think, actually, I want to set something up because there's crowdfunding available. So that could be like a little casserole club, okay, down the street. A couple of people want to set that up, but they've got no idea of what needs to be done with that. So we can give advice on unincorporated and CIOs, okay, and charitable companies and trusts, okay. We do give support to community interest companies, okay. So Ben, you've obviously had our support in the past, a lot of our support with all the infrastructure support. But community interest companies have a different sort of offer in a way, okay. Eventually you're hoping to to be that sustainable funding for yourselves, for your businesses, through the community energy companies, and you need business planning. Okay, so we work with other organisations to give that support as well, but you can then feed back in when you need volunteers, etc. So we'll work out with you what all the different legal structures are, and then you make your decision. If you decide it's going to be a community interest company, then we support with other partners, and then you can come back for services once you're all registered and set up. So that's the offer at the moment. Okay. I'm just saying, lack of volunteer management support can lead to conflict and risk. This happens a lot, okay? A lot of trustees are like thrown in because somebody said, oh, you want to come into our charity or our group, it'll be great. And then suddenly they're right in the mix of something happening and they have no idea how to go through that conflict and what needs to be done to prevent it happening. So obviously good policies and procedures underpin that. So Leslie explained some of the findings from the VCSA State of the Sector report, okay, identifying the need for funding and volunteer support. So we fed into that, our questions went out into that, and you know, none of that was a surprise to us. We know that's what's needed. Volunteering is in decline. We had a big pump over COVID, which was fantastic, and then people went back to work, and actually we lost original volunteers that were working with groups before COVID hit because, you know, ill health, etc., aging population. So we've got to pump that back in, and that's what we do through our volunteer recruitment programme. So, okay. In Shropshire, we do have a vibrant voluntary community and social enterprise sector. Really proud to be part of that. But you have to thrive and you have to survive. So as funding and services across all sectors continue to reduce, we really need to keep offering these services. So we need to increase our volunteer recruitment, and we need to have that really underpinned. That needs to feel safe. People need to be reassured. They have to have the right training, and they have to have the right reviews and support as they go through their journey with those particular organisations. Source and support new funding, which is why we're so excited about this programme that's coming to Shropshire, because this is another way that we can pump that through and increase what people need. Provide sector-led training, obviously, to ensure our compliance and increase sustainability, and obviously their day-to-day governance needs. So we don't just have one group that will come to us and we give an hour-and-a-half scoping meeting. We have groups that we have been supporting for 18 months. They keep needing different things, or they will come to us and they start off and then they just develop really quickly and really well, which is absolutely fantastic to see. We were at a conference last week, we presented at that, and we had Laura Attio from Open Harmony. And basically, you know, nearly 2 years ago, she was on her own. She'd set up as a CIC, and she literally, that was her. Over the time, she's now going to develop into Telford because she's got a sustainable programme to support in Shropshire with dedicated trustees that are confident in their trusteeships and what their roles and responsibilities are. She's been able to get funding with the help of Carol, and we've delivered lots and lots of training to her staff and her volunteers. So that's been great. So you know, people develop. It's great. It's a really interesting role to have and to support with people on their journey. It's okay, just threw me a little bit then. I was like, where am I? Okay, so our main aim, obviously, at the moment is to increase funding support to the VCSE sector. Because at the moment, we kind of have peaks and troughs in the team. We can have like 3 months where there's like a heavy influx of people needing governance support, okay? At the moment, it seems to be funding, and that's not tailing off. We've got graphs, and it's just going like that. So we definitely need more funding. It's getting harder to get funding from external funders. I think, Carol, was it when we started, it was like 1 in 7 applications was successful. We're now kind of seeing 1 in 13. So like this is how tight it is. And people get, you know, disillusioned if you keep writing bids and you're not getting anywhere and you've taken the time and it's your 4th bid that goes in. So we make relationships with those funders where we can to say what is expected to come in. So we manage expectations, we know what they're asking for, and then we can support those groups and organisations to go for that sort of funding. Just look. making sure I'm not missing anything off here. So yeah, the team is here today. Okay, so if you have any questions, if you haven't got time to speak to us today but want to further follow up, then we're happy to come and see you. We like to come and see groups and organisations as they're working or they're starting up, so we can see what your passion is, where the interest is, you know, make sure, you know, you've got that support from the very, very beginning. So the team is around if you've got any questions. I'm just making sure I haven't. So we had some questions about CIC. I think I've answered that, Ben, haven't I, about the community interest companies that we support, but we support with other partners, okay. The thing about bank accounts, yes, it's one of the stuff we do through governance. So if it's a new group setting up, we will guide them through the support of setting up a bank account. It normally has to be, well, definitely has to be at least 2 signatories, okay. So that's something that we'll work with Space Hive on that. And with regards to CIOs, yes, definitely. They are our main priority. Small to medium, unincorporates and CIOs, that's who we prioritise. The larger charities tend to have their own governance support. You know, they've got big head offices with HR, with policies and procedures, with recruiting of volunteers, okay. But our Shropshire-based small to medium don't have that. That is why we need infrastructure support, okay. Has anybody got any questions? Oh, yes, gentlemen.
Stand by me, it will save a lot of legs. Yeah.
I've only got little legs.
One general question. I think I heard more or less in the opening remarks of something under a couple of thousand charities in Shropshire.
Last count, I think it's 1,700.
1,700, right, okay.
Yeah.
I see on the bottom of your slides 4 organisations. What I'm really trying to get at, charities contact you when they know you're there, they know that you can help, and that they need help, right? How assured are you that you're reaching all the other charities? That seems to me to be a big issue. How can other charities sort of join in? Because they may well have expertise they can give to other charities as well, rather than you dispensing it. And a secondary question, which is quite different, is, everybody in this room will know this, you say funding is difficult. Funding for projects is difficult. Funding for core funding, the couple of £1,000 a year you need to pay your accountant and your company fees and all that, that's almost impossible to obtain. And that kind of guidance, I think, would be very valuable.
So, thank you for those questions, really valid. So your first question with regards to how do we know we're reaching everybody? We're a tiny team, okay? Tiny team. But the demand is there. We have 7 expressions of interest just from groups, normally a week, okay? A lot of it is word of mouth. A lot of it is to be the support of the actual partnership, the umbrella of Shropshire Infrastructure Partnership. That's where the experts are delivering infrastructure strategically across the county. So if it's something that one of our partners can't deliver or support with, we know somebody that can. We do a lot of signpostings. That's why we need the umbrella, okay, of the infrastructure partnership. With regards to, sorry, your second question. Core funding, yeah, okay, yeah. So what we found when we first came into, when we started doing this was, there was very limited core funding, okay? And that was a real problem. And as we made up relationships with our funders, we were able to feed that back and actually influence. So they now, a lot of the time, they are saying there is an understanding we need to have core funding, and they put it in. And it goes back to after COVID, when people were on their knees delivering frontline services. So a staff member of a small charity might be the only staff member with like 20 volunteers supporting, and they may have had their hours reduced from 37 to 16, okay, because of lack of core funding. Carol, she's just going to...
You know, and the best thing to do is if is that a funding need for your group or organisation, is to have a chat with me. You know, I can come out and have a chat with the group or organisation and find out what it is they need. We in Community Resource manage a number of community grants, and at the moment we do have a grant, the Telford and Shropshire Support Fund, which is set up specifically to fund core costs. You can apply for up to £1,000 on that. Fantastic. Excellent to know. Yeah. It is difficult to get, but it's not impossible, and the best thing to do is have a chat with me. Okay.
Can I just add as well on the communication and finding out who's doing what and where the support comes from? The VCSA is another organisation, umbrella organisation across Shropshire, which is invaluable in terms of getting that information out, in terms of what all members of the VCSA can provide to one another. And I think that's the key thing. It can be peer-to-peer support amongst voluntary sector organisations. So use the VCSA. If you're not a member, sign up, become a VCSA member, because then you'll be able to access all that information that flows through from one organisation to another.
And I think that is our USP in the voluntary sector, collaboration. That's what we do really well with our partners, our stakeholders, with the public sector, or everybody, to make sure that if we don't know, we always know somebody that can, because we're so passionate at getting that message over. I think that's me. Has anybody got any more questions? Nope. There we go.
Thank you very much, Ali. That's great to hear. So in summary then, I just want to say how wonderful it is to hear about this wonderful new opportunity, and particularly all the bits on the back of it, like how we can raise profile of what we do and get other people involved as volunteers and as long-standing sort of supporters and donors. That's brilliant. And also how we can collectively show the impact of the sector, which again is a brilliant added, I don't need that, thank you, added bonus to the Space Hive crowdfunding option. And as always, it's great to hear how the support available through the SIP partnership. So thank you very much for that, Ali. Sorry, Sarah.
Could we just very briefly introduce Paul, who is happy to speak a little bit about the grant funding available through the Cultural Compact?
Yes, Paul.
Too good an opportunity to miss.
It certainly is. Sorry.
Hello then, I'm Paul Gossage, and I've got the very great pleasure of being the development manager within the culture, leisure and tourism sector of the council. One of the things that we've been working on over the last 12 months is the establishment of what's known as the Cultural Compact, Vibrant Shropshire, a Cultural Compact. And this is bringing together for the first time the cultural sector alongside with other allied sectors such as education, health and well-being, transport and business. We're very fortunate that we were successful in making an application to the UK Shared Prosperity Fund and secured £130,000, of which £100,000 will be distributed to the cultural and other sectors to support cultural activities that help to deliver some of the council and Shropshire's key cultural priorities. These include activities such as overcoming barriers to participation, and that can be as broad as people living in rural communities with poor transport and no access to the cultural provision elsewhere. It might be looking at the way that people with additional needs can't access culture due to their own access needs. Other priorities include raising awareness of climate change, both at a global and at a local level, looking at how we can nurture and celebrate Shropshire's unique landscape through the cultural lens. All of these priorities will help us increase and improve the cultural delivery across the county with a relatively small intervention of, say, £1,000 up to a maximum of £5,000. So if your group is thinking that they'd be interested in putting on cultural activities, and we define culture very broadly, includes drama, opera, ballet, art, all the more traditional aspects of what you might consider culture to include, but also looking at outdoor space. So encouraging more people to explore natural landscapes would be classed as a cultural activity, and even our local food and drink activities, whether you're a local food producer, manufacturer, or provider, that likewise will be classed as a cultural activity. All of this will be launched over the coming weeks. In the meantime, if you are interested, I'll be around at the end of this meeting, so please feel free to come and see me. The deadline will be looking at December, so we've got plenty of time for you to prepare and discuss any applications with you. And then there will be a second grant wave in March of 2024. So if you miss out on the first wave, there'll be an opportunity to look at the second wave. All right, but so I'm here if you want to ask any questions.
Thank you. That was really, really helpful, I think. Thank you, Sarah, to put a bit of flesh on that as well. So, so finally then, just a huge thank you to everybody for organising today. A massive thank you to Shropshire Council for giving this opportunity to the sector and for the support they give to the VCSA. Thank you to people organising today. And isn't it lovely coming to Wem Town Hall? I haven't been up here for ages, so that's really nice. A brilliant venue that's here locally. And next steps then. So for those of you in the room, the next steps are if you want to talk to Frank about crowdfunding, he's here, and about the site. We've obviously got Paul now and Sarah and Hannah who can talk about the UK Shared Prosperity Fund. I am around if anybody wants to talk about the VCSA. Thank you very much, Duncan, because I was going to do a little plug to say if anybody is not already a member of the VCSA and would like to join us, please come and talk to me or sign up. It's a great way to get information and to share your voice with us as well. So on that note, I will just say a huge thank you to you all for coming, and I wish you every success in your crowdfunding.
Gosh, a lot of this went over my head, right, because I don't know what CV, all the rest of it, CIS, I didn't know what any of that was. I've been in education, I know what it's like with all the acronyms, it drives people bonkers, so I was a bit, you know, oh, what's all that mean?
Right.
I'm the secretary of Edstone Village Hall, which is about 2 miles north of Wem.
Right.
And we've been doing a lot in the past 3 years. With the project. It's been an extension of the village hall. Various things have happened.